Home sales in 2024 were lower than at any time in the past 50 years. Now, with mortgage rates remaining stubbornly high, is 2025 going to bring a turnaround, or are we in for more of the same? Now, as the real estate market starts to awaken from its winter slumber, if you like, the early data is starting to come in, and it's giving us some clues as to what to expect. Now, in this February 2025 real estate market update, I'm going to break down the latest trends and, more importantly, what they mean for you or anybody thinking about buying or selling a home this year. So stick around because we're diving into all of it right now. Hi, this is Andrew with the Andrew Smith team, eXp Realty here in Frisco, Texas. And the general consensus as we were heading into 2025 was that the real estate market would show more balance this year. If you were to talk to anybody that's been in the business more than a minute, then you'd know that the last few years has been anything but normal. Buyers and sellers essentially put their plans on hold last year, mainly due to mortgage rates. I mean, buyers seem to be waiting for mortgage rates to drop back down to 3%. And potential sellers, those that have a mortgage rate of 3%, are having a hard time convincing themselves to give up that rate and buy a new home at 7%. And I got to be honest, who can blame them? The truth is, the vast majority of real estate is bought and sold based upon life events, getting married, a growing family, a job relocation, a need to downsize, or just flat out being tired of renting. And those events don't wait for mortgage rates or home prices. I know it would be ideal if you could time them all together, but that usually just isn't how it works. And it seems to be that a lot of potential buyers are coming to that same conclusion. This here is a recent survey, or showing the results of a recent survey from NerdWallet. It's pretty interesting here. It's showing that there's a record number of Americans planning to buy a home this year. In fact, as you can see, in 2025, 15% of those surveyed indicated that they planned on buying a home in the next 12 months. You go all the way back over the past 5 years, 6 years actually, and you look 2020, 21, 22, 23, 24, it had never been higher than 11%. So it is actually higher this year. So it shows that those buyers that have been putting their plans on hold, waiting for things to change, are starting to say, well, we're not going to wait. Now, with many of the potential buyers that I've been talking to, one of the questions that always comes up, or the apprehension, the fear, if you like, is now the right time to buy? Shouldn't I wait? But what if home prices fall? Well, what if? And it's very difficult, and I get it. I was there. I was scared to death when I bought my first home. And please don't take this wrong. I'm not saying that if you're not ready, you should absolutely be buying a home right now. It's got to be the right time for you, and only you can make the decision that is best for you and your specific situation. But it's like trying to time the stock market. It never works out exactly the way that you think it's going to. But I have a question for you. What if I was to ask you right now, if you could have, would you have bought a home 5 years ago? And the answer to that question for the vast majority of people is, well, yeah, if I could have done it 5 years ago, I'd have loved to have done it 5 years ago. Hindsight is 20/20, isn't it? Well, let me show you this. You've got to think about it from a long-term perspective. Real estate is not a get-rich-quick scheme. So when you're looking at making a move, there are a ton of what-ifs. There's a ton of questions that come up, and I get it. But you've got to look at it over the long term. So let me share this with you just to kind of maybe ease your mind a little bit along those lines. This that we're looking at right here shows the percentage of change in home prices all across the country over the past 5 years. Now, right here, you can probably see that 57.4% on average is how much home prices went up over the past 5 years. If we look more specifically, they went up 46.7% in California, 50.7% here in Texas. So again, knowing what you know now or seeing this, if you could have bought a home 5 years ago, would you have? And the answer is obviously yes. But what if we go back even further? What does that look like? Well, take a look at this. Now I'm going all the way back to 1991. And this is showing the percentage change in home prices over that time. 321.6% national average. 322% in California, 343% in Texas. I mean, you look at some of these other places, 465% in Arizona, 623% in Montana, 613% in Utah. You get the idea. So this is why I say when you're buying a home, you have to start thinking about this with a long-term plan in mind. Now, I'm not saying you're going to stay in the same home for 30 years. The vast majority of people right now stay in a home for a little over 9 years. But the point being is even when you look at the equity that someone would have gained in the past 5, if you were to buy a home now and then stay in that home for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, you can roll that equity into another home. And again, stay there for a while and then roll that equity into another home. That's the way it goes. But there's some point in time when you have to put a stake in the ground and say, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to figure out a way to get into the market. And again, this makes it sound like I'm up here just beating on a drum saying, buy, buy, buy. And that's not my intent in this video at all. It's just to give you information and a historical perspective on where the value of real estate goes. It is still considered the absolute best long-term investment in the country. Now, if you've got questions or a specific situation you'd like to discuss in more detail, please know you can always reach out. In the description below, I have got a link to my calendar where you can book a call. It is completely free. It's a free 30-minute consultation just to share ideas, kick some ideas around. Let me provide you some additional insights so that you can make the decision that is best for you. And when you do want to make that decision, the next question I usually get is, when is the best time to buy? So that's a question that impacts both buyers and sellers. When's the best time to buy? When's the best time to sell? And the truth of the matter is, the real estate markets, for the most part, across the country, are very seasonal. Here, take a look at this. This right here is from the National Association of Realtors, and this is showing where the median home price is. This is looking at last year. Okay, so you can see here, prices are the lowest in January. They increase a bit in February. They increase a bit in March. Those 3 months are the absolute lowest price point time of the year. That is when prices are at their lowest. Now, it's kind of interesting. You know, it goes there. It peaks in June for the most part. Then it starts to decline. And then it kind of holds off here between November and December. And again, this is national. Here locally in Frisco, we actually see this decline a little bit more. Once we're past Halloween, things really start to slow. And we'll see this trend down a little bit more in November and December before hitting that bottom, usually in January, and starting back up again. Now I'm going to turn my attention specifically to the data and trends here in Frisco. Now, I know many of you that watch this are not based in Frisco, but I'm going to ask that you stick with me because I'm going to show you exactly how you can get the same data for the market of interest to you, as well as share which trends and data points you're going to want to pay close attention to in order to spot where your local market is heading. All right, this right here we're looking at is from my weekly market update. Now, as I mentioned, this is specific to Frisco, but if it's not Frisco that you're interested in, right here, you can type in any city or zip code in the entire country and you are going to get the exact same report. It's updated every single Monday with all of the information specific to your market. Now, as I scroll down, the first thing I want to look at is median list price. Now, this is showing the change in pricing over time. Now, I am zoomed in. I didn't go all the way back. I'm just back all the way here to January of 2023. Now, if you remember when we were just looking at those other charts on as far as is there a better time if you're interested in buying or how the seasonality of pricing works, you can remember that January, February, March were the absolute lowest price points of the year in general, and then they usually peak in June and then start back down again. So you can see that's pretty true here. You can start to see as we move through a year, pricing starts to really swing upwards all the way through the spring here in Frisco. Back in 23, we actually peaked in July, not June, and then we started down again. So you can see, as I mentioned, our pricing does continue to trend down after Halloween. It keeps going all the way down. We bottom out in January, and then we start up again. And then last year, we did in fact peak out in June. But as we go into this year, right, you can start to see the trend that we're looking at, right? We've just about hit the bottom. Right about here, January 3rd is when our market was at its low point for the year. And you can see, now I know there's two lines here. The dotted line is a 7-day data point, so that's why it's all jagged. The data is going to be much more erratic when you're just looking at 7 days. The 90-day trend line is the solid, so it's easy to see the trend line using that solid. But you can see here, we are starting to trend back up right now. It's just started that curve, but that is typical for this time of the year. We're not expecting home prices to increase anywhere near as much as they did a couple of years ago. But again, they are still expected to increase. But saying that, I want to point something out. A lot of people are looking at what's going on, but if you go back all the way to March, end of February, we're pretty flat. A lot of the reports I put out a year ago were saying, based on what I was seeing, I thought pricing here in Frisco was going to be pretty flat. And I'm still seeing the exact same thing. Nationally, CoreLogic are expecting prices to increase about 4% this year. I wouldn't be surprised, based on some of the national trends I'm seeing right now, if that gets revised down a little bit. It might be closer to 2%. And again, I'm not saying prices are going to go negative. There's absolutely nothing anywhere in the data, either nationally or locally, to suggest that is true. But prices are not running away the way they have in the past. Pricing right now is relatively stable. Now, the next trend line that I like to go and look at, we'll flip over to here. This now is inventory. And inventory is simply supply. So pricing, as we all know, it's dictated by the relationship between supply and demand. And one of the things that we've seen lately is with mortgage rates being higher, we know that demand has been impacted. So demand has softened. Not as many people are buying. Hence, the lowest pace of sales in 50 years last year. But in order for prices to be negatively impacted, we need to see supply go way up as demand goes down. And we're just not seeing it. As mentioned, I am zoomed in here for the last couple of years. But if I was to release this zoom and go back further, you'll see that, inventory way up over 800 was fairly common. And we're just not seeing that here, right? So it looks as though inventory may have just bottomed out, right here at the end of January. I wouldn't be surprised if that dips down another week again before turning back up. You can see the 90-day trend line is still trending down, but it's going to be interesting to see over the next week or two if this starts to move up a little bit more, or if we are still going to be bumping along the bottom for another week or two before starting our turn upward. I can tell you in my own neighborhood, and as I've been driving around, I am seeing more signs. So I do think that there's more sellers coming to market this year than we've seen in years past, which will have an impact on increasing supply. But as I just mentioned, I don't necessarily think it's going to negatively impact pricing. And let me show you Why? This last one is something that isn't followed anywhere near as closely. It's not a data point that a lot of people pick up on, but what this is showing me properties that have reduced their list price prior to going under contract. Now in Frisco right now, as of January, prices were, or homes I should say, were selling for about 95.5% of their original list price. So not a huge discount by any means. Now, if you've got rising inventory and you've also got rising price reductions, that's an indication of buyer weakness. And that is something to watch for with regards to future home prices. But we're not seeing that right now. As you can see, it's up and down in Frisco all the time. And right here, it's still pretty flat. The 90-day trend line is still down. It's holding fairly steady right now. If we see this turn up over the next few weeks, and then you start to see this run back up above levels we've seen in the past, and you also see the supply, the number of homes for sale also increasing, that could be a sign of future price weakness. So that's definitely something I'm going to be keeping an eye on. I will say, from a national perspective, we did just see an uptick in the number of price reductions, which is very unusual for February, but we're not seeing that here in our local market. So in conclusion, what does all of this mean for anyone that's considering buying or selling a home this year? Well, I know here in Frisco, one of the things you may have noticed from the builder, the new construction perspective, is you're not seeing necessarily as many price reductions. You are still seeing them. You can get them in certain communities on certain homes, but you are seeing the builders aggressively tackle financing rates. So they're offering incentives geared towards lowering the mortgage rate, which has a much bigger impact on the monthly payment and affordability than just a price reduction. You may have seen it on my videos before. A 1% reduction in the mortgage rate is equivalent to about a 10% reduction in the price. So many of the builders, Highland Home, for instance, they're reducing the rate to 4.49% for the first year, and then they're fixing that rate at 5.49% for years 2 through 30. So if you're looking for about a 5.5% fixed rate mortgage, that's available right now. Got questions on that or want to know where? Then reach out. Again, call or text the number that's up on your screen, or go ahead and schedule that call with me and let's talk through your specific situation in more detail. It can be more difficult from the resale perspective for you to get the exact same type of deal, but you are seeing more opportunities out there, especially as more resale sellers are coming to market. Now, for anyone considering selling, that pricing works just the same for you. People that are looking to maximize the sales price of their home this year, those are the people I've been talking to lately. We're starting to prep to get those homes ready to go on the market now. So sometime by about March, or at the very latest, beginning of April, is when you'd want to get that property on the market in order to try and get marketed out there and try and capture the highest price point of the year. So again, I hope that this information has been useful to you. If you've got any specific questions about the market whatsoever, or if you've got a specific situation that you would like to talk through, I do invite you to reach out. There's never any obligation whatsoever. Let's just talk it through and see what makes the most sense for you. So thanks so much for spending some time with me here today, and I invite you not to go anywhere because I know you're going to enjoy this video coming up next.